should be recording now, hopefully. If not, I'll just have OBS in the background doubling because why not? But other than that, we're ready to get started. Okay, I think we should be good. You heard it started recording, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna get started, and well, welcome everyone. This is going to be the second workshop in our series for making how to make a game, and we're going to be working in Godot. The first workshop given by Jaden, our fellow GDYU president, was on how to make a simple top-down game, and that was cool. It was really nice. Although we do kind of think that people from the last workshop are coming to the first people from the last workshop are coming to the second one, or the one right now. I'll try going over the basics again. I'll try going slowly, and we'll try to make a platformer this evening. I'm going to showcase what exactly we're going to be making in just a sec. And we're going to be making the exact same thing or very similar. And I'll just pull that up right now. Okay, so what we're going to be making is a version of one sec. What we're going to be making is a simple platformer like this, where we can move left and right. Is it a little bit laggy?
I think it looks okay.
Seems fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay. So we're going to be making a platformer with enemies, and we can move around. The camera will follow us. We'll try hopping around. This Goomba is stuck. I just stomped on its head. And we're just going to be trying to make a simple game like this. We'll try to make this within an hour, and we'll see what we can do. Of course, these blue squares aren't going to be there. They're just for debug view. They're just in the debug view, but we'll see what we can get up to. And of course, we can make another level and whatnot. So let's get straight into it. So we're going to be working in the Godot game engine. I'm going to share my entire screen in just half a second. My entire screen should be good. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you want to make a project in Godot. Yours might be blank, but we will just click New Project in the top right, and we'll just name our project, platformer, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. Just create folder. These settings don't really matter. Create and edit, and we'll get straight into it. Now, before I continue, I just want to make sure who's going to be following along, just so I can get an idea of how many people are following along, and should I lean more on the theoretical side, or like making sure people are getting all the steps in. So if you're going to be following along, you could just type in chat, or okay, going to try following along. Cool. So if you want, Zach and Christina, if you want, you can just like unmute whenever, and you can say like I'm good, or just type in chat. I'll keep my eye on the chat, so I understand that you guys are a-okay if I continue on from a step. Cool. Okay. So we're going to start with making a regular 2D scene. Jaden explained in the last workshop, but I'll just go over it briefly. Basically, everything in Godot is a node. A node is basically think of it as a bucket where you keep all your stuff, and we're going to name this bucket the world bucket. Why the world? Because this is where all the things that our game is going to have, like the player, the blocks, the door, the enemies, that's where everything is going to live inside of this node. So now that we have that, we're obviously going to want to, we just want to make sure everything's working. So we're just going to click run the project just to make sure everything's working. You don't have to do this step, but if you want, you can see that the window's made and nothing's there. So we got to do a couple of things. So let's actually, I want to make this as interactive as possible. Do you guys want to work on the player first, or make some tiles? So like make the world or make the player? Just one person will say, and that they'll okay, world. We'll make the world first. Okay, tiles, sure. So we're going to work with the tile map in Godot 4. It changed from Godot 3, and it's not like any place. It's not like any tile map system you've seen in any other game engine. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with clicking over here to this plus sign. So just click the plus sign for a new node, and we have to select the new node. We're going to click other node, and we're just going to search up tile map, and we're going to double click tile map. At this point, you want to bring in your assets. So I'm going to do that as well. That's the so if you downloaded the assets file, if you downloaded the assets file, there we go. You should just have this. You don't really need the README. I'm just going to copy. So I'm going to go over here, copy, and I'm going to go right click, open in File Manager. So all I did was, let me just have all these windows open. So I wanted to copy my assets that I put into the Discord and the announcements. I'm just going to copy, and I'm going to go over here to my project. You can do it over here, and you can do it over here in the File Manager as well. I'll just do it over here to make it a little bit easier and stay within Godot. So we're going to click Create New Folder, and just going to Assets, and we're going to basically, well, we can go over here and we can just paste our assets. And after that, you'll see that all our assets are imported, and we have no issue. So if you right click, you'll see that they'll show up on the side, and we have like a small animation for an enemy, and we have something for the player. Is that okay? Does anyone want me to go back or something? If no one says anything for like in like 5 seconds, I'll just continue. 3, 4, 5. Okay. So for the tile map, we're going to click on the tile map, and this one's a little bit confusing, so you would want to pay attention. So we're going to click on the tile map. We're going to click tile set, new tile set. Cool. We're going to click tile set in the bottom, and we're going to drag and drop our image for our tiles. It's going to say this atlas texture was modified. Would you like to create tiles in the atlas? Would you like to automatically create tiles in the atlas? What does that mean? It means, do you want to make tiles automatically? So you can see over here that a grid showed up, and we automatically have tiles. Because I want this to be like quick and simple, we're going to go with one tile, but later on in the evening, I'll show you how to work with the auto tile just to make it so that you can have something a little bit more fancy like we had at the beginning of the workshop. So I'm just going to click this tile over here. So I'm just going to zoom in with my mouse wheel, click, and get an idea of where this one is. So the atlas coordinates are 518. I want to remember that. So what does that let me do? Well, I'm going to go to select, and I'm going to click this tile. Okay. After I click this tile, I'm going to go over here to layers. I'm going to click add element. No, sorry, my mistake. A little bit confusing just because they changed it from Godot 3. 1 second. Oh yeah. Physics layer. 1 second.
If you click on tile set, is it?
Pardon?
If I click on tile set and like the top right.
Yeah. Ah, thank you. That's right.
Is this where you're looking?
Yeah. So I want to go over there. I'm going to click physics layers, and I'm going to click add element, just so I can get the physics, like the physics interaction, so our player walks on the tiles. So we're going to work with this white tile, and we're going to click tile set again. If this is not selected, select property, and you can see this physics layer 0 popped up. That's where we're going to paint our collision shape. So this is what the collision shape for that tile looks like. And basically, this is what the player will walk on. So if we go over here, and we have to save our scene, so we're just going to save this as tile map. I'm actually going to make a source folder and save everything into it. So I'm just going to click save. And if you see over here on the right, we have a source with our tile map. I'm just going to move the world inside the source folder as well, which is where all our code is going to be and scenes. So if I go over here and click, we have a collision shape on our tile. How do I know it's a collision shape? Well, it's in blue. And in Godot, collision shapes are often blue. So what are we going to do with that? We're going to click tile map now, and we're going to click paint, and we can see that we have this white square following our cursor, and now we can just paint with these tiles. If we run this scene, nothing should show up, but if we run the scene, so run the current scene with F6, you can see these tiles show up. And if I just exit out of that and go to debug, view visible, and click visible collision shapes, you don't have to do this. I'm just showing you. If I run this scene, you can see that they'll be blue because these show the collision shape on these tiles. Now that we have that working, we can just...
Sorry, could you go back over the steps for adding the collision to the tiles?
Okay, sure. I can go over that again. I'll just do the tile map again really quickly and focus a little bit more on the tile set, the collision part more. So for a tile set, we're going to just create a new tile set over here. We're going to click it, and we're going to be taken to this tile set tab at the bottom. Just going to drag our thing in, or drag our tile set in, and it's going to ask us a question. Just say yes. We're going to find the tile that we want. We're going to click it, and then we are going to go to select. Sorry, we're going to select the tile, and we're going to see that we have all of our properties set in, and we're going to go to, so this is how you get the collision in. We're going to go to physics layers, click add element. After that, you should go to paint up here in the top right of these three, and you're going to click select a property editor, physics layer 0. And by that, you'll be able to modify your collision shape for your tile. So this one will have this collision shape. If you wanted another tile, like let's say you wanted that one, you can basically create as many collision shapes as you want for whatever tile. And when we go to our tile map and we like select a certain tile, we can paint and have collision shapes on all of them. So if I just run this in real quick, I'm just gonna name it temporary just to show that different tiles will have different collision shapes. That may not be super visible, but these are two distinct tiles and they both have their own collision shape. So that's how you would go about adding a collision shape to your tile set, by making sure that the physics layer is available. So to just add a physics layer, you would click add element, and then to make sure the collision is working, you'd click one of the tiles and you just click physics layer, and then select the tile that you want to have collisions with. So you can see over here that this 3x3 patch has collisions on all of their tiles. And if I was going to paint with them, I would have collisions on all of them. And does anyone have any questions? Or was that okay? If no one says anything, I'm just going to continue. 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to delete the temporary scene because we don't need it. And I'm going to close it over here, so don't save temporary. And this is our tile map. So we're only working with one at the moment. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to go back to our world bucket or world node. We're going to click it, and we're going to click this little link icon up here, which is instantiate child scene. So we're going to click it, and we're going to click tile map. What this allows us to do is it allows us to fill up our bucket or our world node with a tile map in it. And what does this allow us to do? Well, we can now select this tile. If we go to the tile map tab at the bottom, so select tile map, click tile map tab, and then select this tile. What we can now do is we can paint a little level. So I'm not going to go super fancy. If you want, you can just use the rectangle tool, and you can just paint a little level where our player will be walking. Nothing super fancy, because we just want like a few things where our player can jump over and probably hit their head on. That's important because I want to go over like a few things about game design in this workshop, just because we're trying to cater this towards like making a game. So obviously game design is something we want to teach a little bit, and hitting your head against the roof in a platformer, there's a few things you want to keep in mind. So just a simple level, nothing too fancy. If you don't have, I'll just give you guys like a second to set that up, and then I'll go on to making a player. In the meantime, I will just get my little side set up, so I'm okay. Okay. Does anyone want me to wait, or Zach, Christina, are you okay? If no one says anything, I'll just assume you're okay and like.
I'm good.
Okay, so what's that about hitting your head against the ceiling? Well, in a platformer, when you, let's say my mouse is the character, when you're moving around and you hit your head against the ceiling, when we program our platformer, you're going to see a little like glitch or error, and you have to like think around what happens in the platforms. Like in a regular platformer, you're not going to notice it, but when you're making one, you don't notice these things until you go, oh, I didn't realize my code would have done that. So I'm going to be showing what that is. So I'm going to actually just start making the player so we can experiment with that. To make the player, we're going to, again, click new scene, add a new scene, and we're going to make the player. So the player is going to have a character body. It used to be called kinematic body 2D in Godot 3. Now it's called character body, fun Godot fact. And we're just going to call it player. We're going to save this scene as player, and we are going to go from there. For our player, we're going to I wanted to have an animated sprite just to make it a little bit more fun, but we can do that at the end. Right now, we're just going to have a simple sprite 2D and a collision shape. So I'm just going to click over here, click, and I'm going to type in collision shape, of course, collision shape. And I'm just going to scroll in and make sure that I have a square. I'm going to enable grids just so I can snap it to the first set over here. Just going to drag it and make sure it's within like what is it, 16 by 16 pixels. And I'm going to click my sprite 2D, and I'm just going to grab this default Godot icon. If you want, you can grab the player, and you can see it's blurry. That's a small issue. Why is it blurry? Well, not to depart from making the player, but if we go to our project settings, we can fix this blurry player. How? Well, if we just scroll down into textures, so I went to general, I went to rendering. Under rendering, the first tab is, or first list item is textures. What we're going to do is, instead of linear, we're going to do nearest. And you can see right away, our player is clear. That's how we import our stuff. So a pixel art is really clear at a, like, because this pixel art is just 16 by 16, it will be clear when we import it instead of having a filter or a blur. That's out of the way. How do we actually make the player? Well, what we can do is we can attach a script to our players. So I'm just going to go over here, top left, and there's a script icon, like a green plus sign on a script. Just click create, and we are going to program our player. Oops. There we go. For our player, we just want to have the basics down so we can move left and right. That's all we want to focus on right now, and that's what I will be showing. And it won't be that hard to, surprisingly, it's not that hard to make something like Mario nowadays, given how game engines work. So what are some things we want to define? Well, actually, I'll ask the chat, or if anyone wants to unmute and talk, feel free. Just remember you are being recorded. But what are some things in a platformer that you would want to define? I will go first and say, obviously, we want to have some sort of constant like gravity. And we can set gravity to anything, but let's go with like 9.8 meters per second, or 98, or just some random number. I found 98 works good. You can make it 100 as well. 50 also works. It doesn't really matter what number it is. We can change that later. If anyone wants to like say another variable, like jump force. Okay, I like that one. Jump force. So we'll make that a constant jump force. And we'll just make it like 800. I know these numbers beforehand. You can experiment and try out other numbers if you want. That you can do that on your own time. Maybe someone will say one more.
Like
if not,
the velocity of the character.
Oh, I like that one. So constant, let's just call that speed. And let's just make that like 200, I guess. These numbers kind of seem arbitrary, but we can play around with them and you'll see how they vary. We're going to define a few variables that we need for ourself, which is going to be the Y speed. I'll explain why we need to do Y speed, but for now, just understand that it allows us to track our Y velocity, and that's all we really need for now. So for our to move our player, we have to do something in the physics process function. In the first workshop, we learned that the physics process function happens every frame. So if your game is running at 60 frames per second, in this case it is, every frame something will happen. And what do we want to do every frame? We want to move and slide our character. Move and slide is a built-in function. This blue text means this blue text shows that this is a function in Godot. And if we control click it, we can learn a bit about it, such as the idea that this moves the body based on velocity. I don't know if you can read that, but that's what it says. And what does that mean? So if we go back to our script, we can actually type in the law, and then it's already pre-built. This is a pre-built variable under the character body 2D class. If you don't know what that means, just know that because at the top over here, we write extends character body 2D, we have access to these two, we have access to this function and this variable. Now we want to set this variable to something. Well, what do we want to set it to? Well, we want to set it to, well, let's actually control click this and understand what is it. Velocity, current velocity in pixels per second of the character body 2D, and it's a vector 2. What's a vector 2? If we just scroll down, we can see that it is basically it's a data structure that holds an X and Y. What does that mean? Well, it holds a point in space, or it can hold some sort of value that's related together. In this case, speed is, in a 2D game, speed is a arrow that it's easy to represent speed as an arrow. So there would be an X component and a Y component. And hey, isn't that cool that we have well, we don't have one right now, but we can define a vector 2 with some X speed and some Y speed. Well, what do we want the X speed to be? Well, it's going to shout at us and say X speed not declared in the current scope. we can just make a variable called x speed, and we can call it, or we can define it to, let's say 300, or let's say speed, because we're going to be using this constant up here. By the way, I didn't explain this, but constant, we learned in the last workshop that constant is a variable that you can't change when the game is running, but variable or var, this red word, means that you can change it during runtime, and we'll see. So, but this will basically move our character. We can even test that out. If we go to our world, and we go over here, so I just went to the 2D view in our world. I'm going to click the world node or world bucket. I'm going to place my player in. You can see the player is really tiny. That's not an issue. But if we just go over here and we just drag our player somewhere over here and we click F5 to run, we can see that our player moves and stops when it hits a blue block or something that the collision shape. And that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So what do we do after that? Well, we can actually make sure that the gravity works. So what can we say about the gravity? Let's just move these two lines down, and I'll explain why we have to move them down in a second. So what can we do about the gravity? Let's say if our player is not on the floor, so if not is on floor, so that's kind of funny English, but it means this is basically the same as saying if we are not on the floor. If we are not on the floor, let's think about this logically. If we are not on the floor in a platformer, what do we want to do? We want the y speed plus equals gravity. And if we run this main scene, so if I click F5 to run, you can see that we fall down. It kind of happens a bit too quick to see, but that's we fall down because of gravity. So now what do we do? So what do we want to do next? Well, we have falling down. What about jumping up? So if our input, so input is a, let's just control click and see. If input is an object, so if we have an input of, let's say, is action just pressed up, just pressed UI underscore up. Don't worry, I'll explain what up is in a second. But if we have is action just pressed up, what do we want to do? Well, we obviously want to do y speed plus equals jump force. Notice how gravity is a positive number and jump force is a negative number, because in most games and most game engines, if you have, let's say you have like a floor, going downwards is positive and going upwards is negative. That's just how game engines were built, and that's something we have to keep in mind. That's why the jump force will be negative and gravity will be positive. So if we go over here and click F5, we will see, well, let's test out what we see. So if I just click up, there we go. You can see I can jump. It's kind of like Flappy Birds, kind of, because we'll just be going towards the right forever, and we'll be able to click up to jump. Everything's cool, but I want to be able to move left and right. By the way, to get this running, if you are at this stage, to click up is defined by the up arrow. We can change that in project settings. If we go to our input map and show built-in actions, this looks a little bit daunting, but if we just look over here, we can see we have these 4 built-in actions, and we see UI down, which is the down button, and also joypad stuff. If you have a joypad or a game controller with you, now you can always set that up if you want, or you play with that. But I do not have one, and I want to play with the WASD keys. So for UI down, I'm going to click S and click OK. What did I just do? Well, I just went to the action that I wanted to modify, and I clicked this plus button. And then after clicking that plus button, I pressed the keyboard button that corresponds to that action. So UI up, obviously W, UI right is D, and UI left is A. Not too shabby. Let's now figure out how we move left and right. So the way we move left and right with this platformer is we can just say X speed. Instead of saying X speed is equal to speed, we can say X speed is equal to input dot get action strength. So we can do left minus right. I'm not really sure which way it's going, or we'll see what happens when you put it the wrong way, and I will do the wrong way on purpose first. So let me just zoom out in 1 sec. There we go. So I will explain this line of code. For our X speed, so the way our player moves left and right is going to be defined by the action strength by the left button minus the right button. What does this mean? So if we just control click get action strength, we can see the documentation. What Godot tells us is that it will return a value between 0 and 1, representing the intensity of the given action. What does that mumble jumble mean? It means we will get a 0 or 1 depending if we press it or not. We get a 0 if we're not pressing, and we get a 1 if we are pressing. That's cool. So left minus right, let's just run it and see what happens. So if you're running this at home, at this point, when you click the D key, nothing happens. When you click left, nothing happens. So nothing is happening. Why not? Well, in reality, something is happening. It's just really, really tiny and we can't see it. So to make sure we can see it, we want to multiply everything by our speed value. So what I'm going to do is in the next line of code, I'm just going to do x speed multiply. So I'm going to use the star, or let's just call it star, asterisk. There we go. And I'm going to do star equals speed. That means we're going to take whatever value x speed is, and we're just going to multiply it by this. This is the same as saying x speed is going to be equal to x speed times speed, or times 200. If we run it now, we'll see that if I press the A key, well, you're not going to be able to see me do it, but trust me, I'm pressing the left key or the A key, and I'm moving right. I'm moving right. And when I press D, I'm moving left, which is the opposite of what I want it to be. And when I press W, I can still jump properly. We can just flip this around by typing right minus left, and our platformer will be A-okay. So now we can move left and right, and we can jump. But you might notice something. If I leave the platformer for a bit, and I press W, I can still jump. If I just walk around, you can see that the jump isn't constant. Why is that? So let's actually figure out why. So if we just print Y speed, speed every frame, we can see what's happening. When we're on the floor, we can see that our gravity kind of maxes out, and it's not consistent. So sometimes it's 400, 450, 400. What happens if I go up and then down? You can see it's 850, 1850. And when I click W, nothing happens. Every time I click W, it kind of subtracts and then goes to 0. So what I want to say is, if I'm not on the floor, add gravity to me. But if I am on the floor, so else if I am on the floor, then just set Y speed equal to 0, because I don't really need anything there. So you can see when I'm on the floor, 0, and I can jump properly. So that's cool. My platformer is working A-okay now. Does anyone want me to go back or cover something that I didn't cover properly the first time? Does someone have any questions? What happened in the first 15 minutes? Well, we just set up the tile map, and that's about it. Kind of rambled. So we started at 8:05, and then for first 10, 15 minutes, we just set up the tile map with collisions. Okay, we can go back to mapping the controls. So if I go to project, if I go up here, top left, project, actually I want to try something. I don't know how well this will work, but oops. Okay. Can you see that magnifier or no? Any thumbs up or it'd work, or
yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay. So if I go to project settings, and I go back over here to my input map, 1 second, input map, and so it should look like this for you, kind of blank. But if I go over here to show built-in actions, it will show me a list of actions that Godot has defined. Kind of daunting, but if we just scroll around, and let's just filter by name. So I want to look for the left action. So we can see, I'm going to actually look for UI_left in specific. Okay. UI left in specific, it'll be the first one. To map an action, we're basically going to click the plus sign. And then over here, we just have to type in what we want the action to be. So for UI left, that's the left arrow key, or A. And that's what I want to assign. And I'm just going to click OK. And then it adds the A key to how I respond to the game. So let me just turn off the magnifier. Did the magnifier help at all? Was it annoying, distracting? Thoughts? Yeah. And then you would just do that for UI right, up, down, whatever you want. Cool. Any other questions? If not, we'll just move on to we can move on to animations, because I actually want to show that. Yeah, I can show the tile map real quick. I'll go over it briefly though. For the tile map, sorry for to everyone else, but I'm not going to take up too much of your time, and I'll show you it really quickly. For the tile map, we're just going to click tile set, new tile set. So you just want to go to a new scene. So I'll do it again. Go to a new scene, other node, type tile map, click tile set. So create new tile set. So tile set, new tile set. We're going to do that. We're going to go over here, drag our image over here into tiles. So in your tile set tab, tiles, drag the image. And then you just want to find the image or the tile that you want to use. So I want to use this one. I'm going to click select. I'm going to select this tile. Okay, we're good. We're going to click on this in the top right, and we're going to say physics layer. So we're going to click physics layer and add element. After adding element, we're going to go back to this tile set tab at the bottom, and we're going to click paint. Sorry, my Godot crashed. Amazing. I don't think that's saved. Let's see. No, we're good. I think the player saved. Cool. So the player saved. Basically what you want to do is when you get over there to second. What I was trying to say is you would click tile set, and you would click physics layers. You would add a physics layer. So basically add element physics layer. You would scroll to whatever tile you want. So select this tile. Once you have that, you can see that the tile will be there. We want to click paint, select the property editor, physics layer 0, and you just select the tile that you want to have the collision layer on. And then you will have your physics layer on that tile, and it should work. So if you just run that scene, you can see that you will have the tiles with the tile. You'll have the tiles and they will have collisions, and that's how you set up the tile map. Is that okay, or was that a little bit too fast? Okay, I will go back at the end and show you. But if you want, in the meantime, I also wanted to showcase this. Just another tile that you can add is a static body, and you can have a collision shape on it. And you can add a sprite onto it just to make sure you can see it. And then what you want to do is you just want to add a rectangle to it. I'm holding Alt to make sure I can extend all sides. And let's just call this a block because that's really all it is. I'm just going to save the block in my source folder. And what you can do with this block, which is just a simple static body, is that you can just place it wherever and the player can walk on it just like the tiles on the tile map. There's like multiple ways to do it, but just to make sure your player can walk on something, you can also have a static body. And to make the static body, you can just literally go static, like make new scene, static body, and then click this button to add a collision shape, and then you can just play around with that. To get the blue stuff open, to get the blue highlights around stuff, you can click debug visible collision shape. I hope that's okay. I'm going to move on to animating the player because I think that's always fun and making sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just one. I have another question, if it's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I noticed you're able to jump even when you're not on the floor, so you're like double jumping indefinitely. Were you planning to get to that later?
Yeah, I mean, I could get to that now. It doesn't really matter when I get to it. I just wanted to make sure that we had like the basics, the extreme basics down. I can cover that now if you want.
That's up to everyone else. I don't really care.
Okay. Does someone else want to see that right now? How to limit the jumping? To be honest, I wanted to do like a quick brainstorming session and I actually wanted everyone to like kind of figure out how do we reset the jumping. So if someone else is comfortable, how would we go about doing that? Because I wanted to make this interactive and you think, because I don't want to keep telling you, I want you to tell me as well. So how would I go about making the limit the jump? So like you can only jump once. How would I go about that? Feel free to unmute or type it in the chat. If no one responds in like a minute-ish, I will say. But I think it's an interesting thing to try to figure out. In the meantime, I'll kind of like draw out the problem and let's see if people would understand it better maybe. So we want to make sure that we can jump when we're on the ground. So there's something related to the player being on the ground and having access to a certain like keyboard press. Whereas if we're in the air, we shouldn't jump. And then that means we should not have access to a certain keyboard press. If anyone has any ideas, feel free to say. or type them out.
I will give my suggestion. So on line 14, where we are checking to see if UI up is pressed, we could also check to see if is on floor.
Oh, I like that. So and is on floor. Like this. We can try running that and see what we get. So right now I'm on the floor and I can press. So you can see I'm like spamming W or like spamming the up arrow and nothing is happening. And that's actually correct. That's amazing. Can I react with clapping emojis? I want to react. Okay, I don't know how to react. Oh, there we go.
Good job,
clap.
Zach. Yay.
Yay.
Okay. So that is actually perfect. That's what I would do. But if you wanted to make it, if you wanted to make like a double jump or something, what you could do, and this is what I have in the JIT repo. What you could do is you can have like a variable and like jump count, and you can just say, I don't know. So if we press this and jump count is less than like the max jump count. So if you want to have like multiple jumps, kind of like Super Smash Bros, I think. Like you're gonna like jump multiple times. We can make this a constant because we don't expect it on changing. We have a max jump count, and if our jump count is less than max jump count, we can continue jumping. Of course, that means that double jumps. What we could do is, so every time we jump, we want to add 1 to our jump count. So plus equals 1, and we want to make sure that actually we can try it out. So right now, logically, if we look at the logic line by line, if our jump count is less than the max jump count, then we should be able to jump. So I'm going to jump. Now I can't jump anymore. That's a little weird. Let me try that again. So 1, 2, 3, and now I can't jump anymore. Why? Well, if we think about it, jump count is already maxed out. We have to reset it. And how do we reset it? Well, if you think about it, if we are on the floor, so if we are not on the floor, else if we are on the floor, this one is if we are on the floor. If we're on the floor, what do we want to do? Well, we want to reset our jump count to 0. And that means 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, and then no more jumps. 1, 2, 3, and then like you can continue jumping. I also want to address one other question that Nikita had, which was when you jump on the roof. So you can see over here, like I'm jumping regularly, but when I hit the roof, I kind of like fly on the roof. But most platformers, when you hit your roof on the head, you will never notice it unless you're paying attention. But when you hit your roof on the head, you kind of like fall back down instantly. Why does that matter? Well, in real life, if you jump and you hit your head on the roof, you kind of fall back instantly. So what can we do? Does anyone have an idea? If you want to like, maybe this will be a little bit harder because if you're new to Godot, you might not know all the functions, but there's something very similar to is on floor that we can use. If anyone wants to like shoot a guess. I'll give you like 10, 15 seconds to think about it. It's not too hard. And I'll drop a hint in a bit.
Is it just is on ceiling, like
Yes.
on the bottom of the tile?
Well, kind of. Well, you're right on the first part. So if is on ceiling, what do we want to do with our Y speed? Well, we just want to add gravity. So that's perfect. Great job. So now what happens is if we hit our head, we kind of fall. Do we? Not exactly. What we can do instead is instead of saying plus equals, we can just say equals gravity. So we fall down immediately. And if we do that, when we run and hit our head on the roof, we fall back down immediately. And this might not seem like a lot, but it makes a big difference when you're playing the game. So let's say I'm like jumping and hitting my head and like running around, as compared to not having these two lines. So I'm just gonna comment these out using Control K. If we run and this feels a lot weirder. Like, why am I flying for a bit compared to that? So that's what I was talking about at the beginning, which is how do we make sure our player, or like when I was talking about hitting your roof on the head, the difference was it's just a quality of life thing, but it's something that you'd have to think about when you're designing a game. When you're designing a game, you just want to make sure that everything's okay. Okay, I'm glad that's out of the way. We can work on, actually, let me ask, do you guys want to see animations, or do you want to see so like animating the player and seeing the player run, or do you want to add a enemy like a Goomba? If the first person to speak will decide the fate of this workshop. Animation? Okay, cool. To add animations is very simple. Instead of using a sprite 2D like we have over here. Okay, animation. So what we're going to do is we're going to click this add a new node, and instead we're going to click animated sprite. Okay, cool. There's a little error. So this triangle over here is error. What does that mean? So sprite frames resource must be created or set in the frames property in order for animated sprite 2D to display frames. What does this mumbo jumbo mean? A sprite frames resource. So we have to have something called like sprite frames must be created. So we must have something called like sprite frames. So if we go to animation, oh, look at this sprite frames and it's empty. Well, we should create one. So new sprite frames. Oh, okay. So we made a new sprite frame. Let's click it. Okay, cool. We have like this little tab at the bottom. Okay, let's explore it. So default animation. I'm just going to go with the simple whatever we have over here. So default animation is going to be this. To add a new animation, we're going to click add animation over here. And we have a new animation. So let's call this run. And the run animation is going to be basically these initial first 5 images. And you can see nothing is playing. Why? Well, we have to click the play button. And we can see our player is running. It looks a little weird. Why does it look a little weird? I mean, we already have the other sprite here, so we're just going to hide it. And you see we're running, kind of. Let's first bump up the FPS to like 15 or something. Not 515, but 15. So it kind of looks better, but we should like repeat the frames just so that they're a little bit better. So I'm going to drag and drop these. And then you can see that it kind of looks like we're running. It's maybe this one we should get rid of. So I'm just going to delete this frame. So to delete a single frame, you go like this. Kind of looks like he's running. It's because the first and last frames are repeated. And I'd say that looks like running. Does anyone have any objections with that? Okay, that one also looks like running. I think this one looks fine. Of course, you can play around with it, but this is animation. So let's say we just run our scene right now as is. We kind of don't get anything. He's not running. Why? Because, well, we kind of have to program it to run. So how can we do that? Well, let's think about it. What can we do? So we want to say if, okay, let's just go to the drawing board real quick. Drawing board. Let's say we have a player. Let me do a straight line once. Okay. If we have a player and the player is stationary versus the player like running, what's the difference? Well, in this one, the difference if the player is standing still is that there's no key, like on the keyboard, nothing is being pressed. Nothing is being pressed. But if our player is moving, then something is being pressed on the keyboard. This rectangle is meant to represent the keyboard. So we can kind of go from there. If something is being pressed on the keyboard, we should play the run animation. Let's try that out. So another inbuilt function in Godot is function underscore input, not init, but input event. And if our event dot is action pressed, if the event is left or event dot is action pressed right, what do we do? Well, we want to play, or we can like reference this animated sprite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type $, animated sprite 2D. Now I just want to take a second and say, you can name this anything you want. You can name it like gibberish. And if you go back over here, I'm going to be referencing that gibberish. So whatever that is, I'm going to reference that. I'm going to click dot play run. So these 3 lines of code say, when we press something, if that thing is left or right, play the run animation. So if I run my scene, we can see that if I just open up magnifier real quick, we can see that nothing's happening. But when I come run, we're running, and the issue is I let go and we're still running. Why? Because we never actually told Godot what happens when we let go. So we have to do another if statement and say if event.isAction released left or right, if event.isAction released right, then what do we want to do? We want to tell that same animation node play default, which is our default animation. If you remember correctly, if we go over here, sprite frames down here, default is like standing, and then run is run. So what do we have? Well, we can see that. Let me get the magnifier out real quick. Let me just make it a bit bigger because I want people to be able to see. Well, we can see that we have our running. And the issue is when we go left, it's kind of running like it's running the opposite direction. It's running in the opposite direction. But if we press right, we have no issue. So we have to make it so that we turn left. And also another issue, sorry for the mouse movements, but we can see that if I hold the left and right keys, we still run, or it's still playing a running animation. And sometimes it doesn't play one at all. So let's say let's say I'm moving right and I click left real quick, it stops. That's an issue. What could we do to fix that? Let's figure that out. So this is where it gets a little bit more nuanced, but if we are, let's see. So what we could do is if input dot is action just released UI left instead of event will make the difference for this, make the difference for the issue when you press left and right. So, okay, no, but we'll get back to that. The difference between these is very minimal, and you can kind of use whatever you want for the purposes of this workshop, but we'll get back to that in just 1 second. I just wanted to try that. Okay, so how can we fix going left and right? Well, let's think about it. Okay, let me just draw out a line real quick. The difference between left and right is, let's just draw out a player. The difference between left and right is, well, if we're moving rightwards, then the X speed is going to be positive. And if we're going leftwards, then it's going to be negative. We can use this to flip the sprite. So all sprites, even this one, has a property in visibility. Yeah, invisibility, which is, no, sorry, not invisibility. In offset, all sprites have a property in offset, which is called flip H or flip V. I don't remember which one it is. We can just experiment. So flip V is vertical and flip H is horizontal. Oh, look, he's running towards the left now. So we can kind of toggle this in game to make sure our player is running in the right direction. So how could we do that? So let's see. Okay, so it has to do with X speed. So if our X speed is or let's say if our X speed is less than 0, then flip. So for that, we're gonna access that sprite. So this like gibberish is the sprite animated sprite node or animated sprite bucket. And we're just gonna say that sprite node, we're gonna tell it to flip H equals true, and else we're going to tell it flip H equals false. That way, what we can do is we can say, if we're going left, make sure you flip it. And if we're going right, flip it. That part should be good. And just to prevent me from, just to stop the kind of nauseous screen zoom in, I'm just going to set the camera. So I just went to my player, clicked the add, and typed in camera. I added a camera, and I just increased the zoom to like 3x3. Why did I do this? Well, you see in a second. So now when I run the scene by clicking F5, we can see that we have the camera on our player, and when we walk left, the sprite turns to the left, and when we walk right, our sprite plays to the right. Now there's an issue where like we kind of move and like the animation doesn't work properly. So why is this? Well, we can kind of figure out why this is happening by saying, well, there's a few ways we can fix this. One way to fix this is if, okay, so with this line over here, we can kind of change it so that we can hide, we can hide this, and we can say, or comment this out so it's not working. So right now, all we have is left versus right. We're gonna comment that out, and we're gonna replace it with, let me just put some space. If X speed is less than 0, we're going to want our, we're going to want that sprite node, or we're gonna want that animation, animated sprite. We're gonna want it to play run. We can do the same if it's else if X speed is greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, that means we're moving right, so moving rightwards. And if it's less than 0, we're moving left. But what happens if it is 0? So if it's 0 exactly, that means we are stopped. And if we are stopped, we can play, let me just get access to it. We can play default. That should make sense logically, because if we're moving left, we should play running left. And if we're moving right, we should play the right run. And if we're stopped, we're stopped. So everything is cool. I can like press the left and right arrow keys and nothing happens. I can let go of the right left to go right. I can, it just works. It just works perfectly fine because we are running the animation logic based off our speed, which is fine for this workshop. But of course, in bigger games, there are better ways to do it. We could go over them if you want, but this works perfectly fine. And we can see that we don't have like a jump animation. Would you guys want to see a jump animation, or should we move on to making an enemy? I can like kind of go over the jump animation, but do you want me to implement it, or should we just go to making an enemy? First person to say something besides the fate of the workshop.
Let's do the enemy. Sure.
Okay. Enemy. Enemy is very simple. Again, similar idea to the player. It's going to be a character body. So character body. And in this character body, we're going to just rename it to enemy real quick. Save. And what do we want on the enemy? Well, we want a Goomba-like enemy. So what are we going to do? We're going to add a sprite. Cool, we have a sprite, and we're just going to add a image to it. This is our enemy. We're going to go to our character body. We're going to click Control A or this plus sign, and we're going to add a collision shape. This way we can actually interact with the enemy, and the enemy can interact with the world. We're going to click New Rectangle and just adjust it so that it fits the enemy sprite, kinda. And we're going to go to our world, and we're going to just place our enemy down. I'm just gonna drag it. So how do I drag it? I'm gonna click this like move mode, or I can click W, and it's gonna bring it to the floor, near the floor. And if we run the scene, we can see that our enemy is here. We can kind of like stand on our enemy, but it's not doing much. Why? Well, let's see. We actually haven't programmed it yet. So in a similar way to our player, we're going to like attach a script. We're gonna click create script, and we are going to program the enemy very simply. It's not going to require much, and it's a lot simpler than the player, which is in our physics process function. If we're making a Goomba, if you don't know what a Goomba is, it's a very simple enemy in a platformer that just moves like left and kind of bounces off the wall sometimes. Okay. In the chat it says, can you explain what a Goomba is? Enemy that just kind of moves left and right. So on like on a line, it'll just like move left. If it hits a wall of some sorts, it'll bounce back towards the right. And if the player hits it, the player dies or loses life. So what do we say in the physics process function? Well, we can say that, because we're extending the class of the character body 2D over here, what we can say is something very similar to what we have in the player, which is move and slide. Let me see, where is it? Sorry. We can say something very similar to velocity and move and slide. So we're going to say the exact same stuff. We're going to say move and slide. And our velocity is going to be equal to a vector 2 of, let's say, an x speed and a y speed. Our y speed can be a variable again up here. And we can say something very similar to the player. In fact, I'm going to copy paste it just because I can show you how similar it is. If we are not on the floor, y speed plus equals gravity. I'm going to copy it and just paste it in. Of course, we have to define gravity into our character body. Let's just define it as like 100. I believe that's what I had. I had 50 for the gravity. If you're not on the floor, gravity, and then x speed of our x speed is going to be, let's just call it 300, or let's call it 100. If we look at it line by line or by blocks of line, these two lines mean fall down to the floor. This line means move rightwards, and then these two lines mean actually move. So if we run our scene, we can see our Goomba moves, but when it hits a wall, it just stays. We want it to kind of like bounce back and forth, and you kill it by jumping on its head, which we will get to. So how do we make it bounce back and forth? Well, let's think about it. Let's say we have a Goomba over here. So our Goomba is going to be in red because it's a bad guy. So our Goomba is over here. What do we want to say to make it detect a collision? Well, if we think about it for a second, to detect a collision around the Goomba, we have to kind of place a invisible like circle around the Goomba or a square around the Goomba so that it can detect stuff before it gets hit. And we can do that very easily by scrolling in, clicking the enemy node, clicking the plus sign and typing area. We can use an area 2D node. We learned this in the last workshop, what area 2Ds can do. But if we click on the area 2D and click the plus sign again, we can attach collision shape to the area 2D, and we can just make a new collision shape. So now our Goomba will be able to detect stuff near it. Okay, how? Well, we can use the power of signals. If I click on my area 2D and click node, you can see I have a whole list of signals over here. Most of these don't matter, so I can hide them, but this one over here, body entered, basically says if I hover over it, you can see it says emitted when the received body enters this area. What does that mean in simple English? Well, it means that when this collision shape, or when this let me just change the color of it, when this red collision shape, when this red like area hits something, let's know about it. So how can we program that? Well, if we just zoom out, make this window a bit smaller. Why are you fighting? Okay, there we go. If we make it a bit smaller and we go over here to our ready function. So I haven't explained the ready function yet, but as we learned in the last workshop, the ready function is what happens at the start of the frame. And this is where you connect signals usually, or do other fancy stuff. So we're just going to connect, or actually, sorry, we're going to reference the area 2D. We're going to dot connect. And what we're going to do, we're going to dot connect body entered to body entered. Okay, callable. That means we have to define this function. So Godot should actually get mad at me and say, identifier body entered not declared. So what we have to do is, 1 second. Yes, so ready signal happens once when the known enters the scene, or the start of the frame, or the very start of the game. What we have to do is make a function called body entered and type make an arrow and void. This means it will return nothing. This function will return nothing. It means you don't have to worry about it because everything we've used so far is the same. But at the end of the tutorial, if someone wants, I can explain it. It just means that nothing is returned from this function. And what do we want? So we want to actually know what the body was, like what hit us. So if we go back to our diagram over here, we want to know if a player hit this blue circle, did another enemy, did a wall hit it? We want to know. So how do we know? If we click our area 2D and click node, we can see that body enter takes in a parameter, or takes in some data, which is the body, and we can basically type body and then node 2D. And if we let's just say print body, because we want to understand what's happening. So right now we can see when it, okay, sorry, 1 second. It's because in our player scene, we're printing something automatically. Where is it? Oh, we're printing the white speed. So I'm just going to comment this out. I'm going to run the scene again. You can see that. So, okay, in our print statements over here, we have 2 print statements. The area interacts with the enemy. So this is the name of the node, enemy, and it interacts with the tile map. We can actually control what the enemy does depending on what it hits, and we can see in just 1 second if I run it again. So it interacts with the enemy, tile map, and if the player hits it, so you can see, if I zoom in real quick, you can see that the blue of the player hits the red, and okay. So the blue of the player hits the red, and I've hit it 3 times already, and that will cause 3 print statements. That's cool. What can we do with that? Well, we can do a few things, which is if the body, so if the body dot name, so the name of the body, so we're literally going to be accessing this data. If the name of the body is equal to tile map, if it's equal to tile map like this, then we want to like flip the X speed. How do we flip the X speed? Well, if I just move, so I'm gonna make a quick side note over here. Because X speed is defined over here, I can't access X speed up here. Like I genuinely can't say like multiply by -1 to flip it. It'll say it's not declared. But if I just move this line up all the way to the top of the script and define the variable up here, you can see the error will go away, and I can access this variable. Why? Because when the variable was over here, it was defined locally within this function, this physics process function. But when I define it up here, it's for the entire script. And now I can access it over here, and we will be a-okay. Now, what do we want to say? We want to say, well, we can just try it out. So if body.name, if it interacts with the tile map, oh, you can see that it's already coming back towards us. If I just hop over it, you can see it will bounce back, and like it'll just bounce between the walls, kind of like a real Goomba in Mario. Now what happens if else if the body.name is equal to player? What do we do then? Well, we can just end the scene, That's not end quit. So the game will end if you crash into like if the enemy and player crash, the game will just end. I didn't press anything, the game ended. We can change that to something else later on, but right now the game just ends. Am I missing anything? Oh yeah, we want to make sure that we can stomp on their head. Well, let's think about that for a second. Let's say I have this Goomba over here and I have the player. So let's say this player is in green. Green. What happens? What's the difference between the player like walking into the Goomba, so being like kind of on ground level with them, like eye to eye, and like hitting it from here, versus the player stomping on his head? It's a very basic question, but if someone wants to answer that, feel free to like unmute and say or type it in the chat.
Are they just colliding with different sides of the tile? Is that it?
Not exactly. So I'm asking what's the difference between when the player stomps on the head of the Goomba versus the player just walking into them on the side. If you want a hint, I'll say the hint in like a second or two. 2, 3. The hint is like look at where they are. So the idea is like one is up, like one is, you know, kind of up and then down, and then the other is like right next to it. That should ring a bell or two.
So like the Y, where they are
Yeah.
on the Y axis.
So where they are in the Y axis, exactly. And we can kind of compare that to where the Goomba is. So essentially, if the player's Y axis, so whatever their Y level is compared to the ground, if that is greater than what the Goomba's Y level is, then we can stomp on their head and kill them instead. So what we can say is if the body dot global position of that body, if the global position dot Y of the body is less than, remember, because we have to say less than because for game engines, negative is up and positive is down. So if the player's position is less than our own global position dot Y, then we want to basically kill the Goomba. And if it's not, we want to quit the game. So how do we kill the Goomba? Let's just call it, let's just say Q free right now, which means like delete the node from the scene or delete the bucket. And if it's not, we're going to delete the game or turn off the game. And we can try that out. If I'm going to stomp on his head, depending on where the Goomba is. So if I hop on its head, it's deleted. But if I walk into it on the side, we can see that the game is done. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions? We're basically comparing and understanding if there's a difference in the positions, then we have a different response in how the game works. That should make sense. Does someone, okay, so at this point, I'm going to ask, does someone want to see, okay, actually, you know what? I'll give you all a choice. Do you want to see the enemy jump, or do you want to see how to like add another level? Like we make a door and then we can go to another level in the game, or should I make this enemy jump? Kind of like giving AI a jump. Okay. Let's just do a jump because it's very simple. To make the enemy jump, what we're going to do is we're going to click the enemy. We're going to click add, and we're going to go to timer. So the timer node is there. What are we going to do with the timer? Well, we're just going to double click. I'm going to show you another way to connect signals, which is if you just double click, So if you click the timer, click on node, double click the signal you want to connect, click connect. This function will run when the timer runs. So when will the timer run? Well, we have to edit a few things here, which is auto start should be on. So every second, this enemy will jump. So we can just test that out. So jump. So I'm just testing it out. So should say jump. So every time you see this say jump, the enemy should jump. How do we make the enemy jump? Well, it's a very similar idea to the player, which is y speed plus equals jump force. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to type in y speed plus equals, let's say like 800. Okay. So now we can see that the enemy the enemy is not jumping. Let's figure out why the enemy is not jumping. So I'm going to do like some live debugging. I'm going to print out the y speed. Well, we can see that the y speed is increasing all the time. That's actually my fault because it should be minus equals. And there we go. Now the enemy should jump. There we go. The enemy is jumping every frame or every like 1 second. And that's how we get the enemy to jump. Of course, you can like play around with this and like make it, I feel like 1000 or 1500 would work a little bit better. It'll like jump higher. Oh, okay. That's really high. You can, if you're wondering why it's very like the jump isn't consistent, it's really similar to the issue we had with the player at the beginning of the workshop, which is Y speed should be set to like 0 and then subtract. If that's the case, then 500 should work. Of course, I kind of know these numbers already, but if you're new to Godot, just like playing around with these numbers also works. So now we have like a jumping Goomba, basically. And you can like play around with that and add it to whatever you want. That's cool. Next we can make it so that we can switch scenes or add levels. And that should be the end of the workshop. And like that's what I plan to cover. I'll cover other things if people want to stick around for a bit. But after switching levels, I'm gonna like call it the end, if that's okay with everyone.
Sounds good.
Okay. So to switch levels, we need two things. We need obviously another level. So let me just draw somewhere. To switch levels, what do we need? So if this is our player, we need a door of sorts. So a door to like collide with. And then once we collide with the door, we need to like send our player to another scene. How do we do that? That's not too hard. Let's make a new scene. Other node, let's call it an area 2D. This time the area 2D is going to be the parent, and we're just going to attach a sprite. And you might be wondering, we don't have a sprite for a door. That's not true. In this monochrome tile transparent, monochrome tile map transparent packed PNG, we can see if we scroll around, where did the door go? Oh, door. Door is right over there. But I want to use a region of it. Well, we can use a region of it because Godot allows us. So if you just click enabled, you can see it blanks out. Why? Because we just have to select the door. So if I just move around, I'm just going to like highlight the door, close, and we can see that we have the door. But we have like extra parts of it. And that's because we have to be very specific in the numbers we use. So 16 by 16. And I'm just going to like move it around so that I have the door in view. So I'm just going to call this 32. And then this is 256. Yeah, there we go. So if you want to like select the door from this giant tile set, it's 256 on the X, 32 on the Y, and then the square is 16 by 16. That's cool. We have our door. So I'm just going to double click door and then save this scene. And then I'm going to Control A and then add a collision to it. That way we can interact with it and just move. You've seen this like 3-4 times already. Just move it so that the collision shape matches perfectly. And I'm going to go over to my world and attach a door. I'm going to click W to move, and the door is going to be right over here. I'm going to place it right over there. So if I go into my game, you can see the door is right over there, and I can like walk through it because it's an area. And yeah, nothing happens. Why? Because we have to program it. So I'm just going to click door. I'm going to click attach a script. We've seen this before. And I'm going to click on the parent node, go to node, and then click body entered. If the body, so we're going to do if the body, so if body dot name equals player, then I'm just going to click print change scene just to make sure everything is a-okay. If that's the case, then we can go on to like actually make, okay, there we go, change scene. You can see that it's printed. Change scene is printed, and that means the door works. We are going to actually change the scene now. To change the scene, that means we have to have another scene ready. So I'm going to go over here, make a new world. So I'm going to call this world 2 or level 2 or whatever. Oops. Let me just call it world 2. There we go. I just double click to rename world 2. I'm going to go back to my world over here. I'm just going to like copy everything. This isn't the best practice, but for this workshop, it'll do just fine. If you were going to like make a real game, you'd want to use inherited scenes. That's something a little bit more complex. I can explain a bit later, but we have our tile map. If we want to blank or out our tile map, we can just use this paint bucket and right click, and it gets rid of stuff. So I want this new, I should select the tile, and I'm just making the second world. You don't have to do like as intricate as I am, but I'm just setting it up. So we have our second world, and I'm going to place the door on top of this hill. Let's add a little bit of, okay, I can't resist, but let's add a little bit of parkour. There we go. And there we go. We have our enemy. This is going to be the second world. I know a lot much more. I know it's a very, very difficult level. So world 1 is like this, and then world 2 is like this. Cool, cool, cool. How are we going to go from world 1 to world 2? Well, we can tell our door, when the player collides with you, get tree. So get tree is how we reference the entire game, kind of. And we can say get tree, change scene to file. What file? We can change it to world 2. Cool, cool. And if we run the game, this is running the entire game. So this is world 1, by the way, with our Goomba over here on the floor. And there's no like other platform that we can go to. As you can see, there's not like the little 1-block platform I made. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to walk into the door and we get transported to the second world. Of course, you can make this a lot fancier. There's a lot of things that you can do, but this will suffice for now. Okay, there we go. And now we have a slight issue. When we collide with the door again, it's going to take us to the same world because the door has one function at the moment. The door says, okay, I'm going to make sure that you go back to world 2 because that's how we programmed it. If you want to like add a third world and like continue it on, you can make this a variable and then you can change it. But what happens if we want the door to end the game? Well, what we could do is we could say, we can make an exported variable. This is kind of going away from what I had in the repo, but this works as well. So an exported variable, and we can say is final door, and let's set this to false by default. And let's go over here. Whoops. Export, sorry, one second. Let me go into distraction free mode and zoom in. There we go. So export variable is final door. Sorry, my Godot is lagging. Export variable is final door. Just get rid of some extra stuff. There we go. That's a lot cleaner. If this is the final door, and if we collide with the player, so if is final door, what we could do is we could say, I don't know, get tree dot quit, right, to end the game. But if it's not the final door, we can change it to world 2. And if we go back over here to our world 2, one second, we go back to world 2 over here, and we go and we click this door, we can see up here is final door. This is something that we made and we can like toggle it. And over here in the world on our door, we're going to make sure that it's not toggled. So the difference is this is false and over here it's true. So when we run the game, we can see that we collide with the door, we go to world 2, and because world 2 is the final one, because world 2 is the final door, it'll end the game because we're done. And that's how you can kind of like program logic between the same node, but something changed because the inspector changed. That's kind of all I had planned for this tutorial. Does someone want me to go over something else? At this point, if you're tired or whatever, you can like leave, rest, relax, reflect on what you've learned about Godot. But is there something someone would see if auto tiles or state machine for the player? State machine, I'm still learning state machines, but we can do auto tiles because I did prep that. So auto tiles are basically, so this is not what we worked on, but auto tiles are basically things that allow us to do cool stuff. What do I mean? So if we go over here, terrains, walls, you can see that I can paint and it kind of like automatically paints like cool looking walls. Like they look cooler than white squares. How do we set that up? And this is where, who was it? Someone wanted to see if I can't find it. Who was it? Ryan. Okay. If you want tiles, and we're going to do auto tiles now, which is slightly different. So tile map. We're going to make a new tile map and we're going to save this as auto tile. So auto tile. I'm going to save auto tile. This is a new scene. And what are we going to do with the auto tile? Let's click new tile set. Click. We're going to try making the auto tile. So, okay, let me explain what auto tile means. I mean, we already saw it in action, but we essentially define things between blocks or on the tile. So Godot knows how to connect them up and like understand what's happening automatically. Okay, that's really cool. How does it work? Well, let's try it out. So we want to select, there we go. Okay, so we want to go to paint and we want to, give me 1 second. Yeah, I remember this. So we want to go to a few places. We're going to go to our tile set tab over here at the bottom. We're going to go to paint. We're going to click terrains. And over here, it should say no terrains. But if we go over here to our tile set on the right, terrain sets, add element. We have to add another element and call this terrain. So this is how we make sure that our tile set starts to auto tile, because we have a terrain set and then we have a terrain inside of it, and we have to add an element terrain. I know that's very convoluted, but this is how to set up auto tiling. So over here we have terrain set, and we can see terrain set 0. Terrain set 0 is over here, and it matches. We have terrain set, terrain 0. And what is terrain 0? Well, we're just going to select these 9 tiles. We're going to select these ones. Okay. Everything here, because we want some blank tiles as well. There we go. We have some tiles. And you can see over here, we have this like brown thing showing up. That's how we're going to paint our tiles. What we want to do is match corners and sides. Let's do match corners and sides. So what we're going to do is we're just going to paint where we think all these tiles should like link up. So what does that mean? So what I'm painting right now, or what I'm like using these brown squares to do, is kind of connect the tiles on a basis of I want to connect these tiles on the basis of how they're connected to each other, if that makes sense. What you want to do is kind of make like a flowery pattern. Wait 1 second. Okay, there we go. We want to do match corners. Yeah, we want to do match corners like this. There we go. So you want to make sure you select match corners over here under terrain sets, match corners, and you just want to paint in this like sort of a flower fashion. And for these blank tiles, you just want to paint everything. So we have a few things set up here. These blank tiles, you have everything painted. For these side ones, if you can't see them, I'll just pull them up again on the side real quick. For these blank ones over here, because you might not be able to see them very clearly with the brown stuff in the way, we kind of want these side tiles. To get these side tiles, we just have to paint the side that is connected to the rest of the tile. And then for these center ones, we're just going to paint it like this, kind of like in the center and then the corner towards the center, if that makes sense. This is kind of the pattern we want. And then to paint with them, we're going to go to tile map, we're going to go to terrains, and we should see terrain 0. You want to click on this like omnidirectional thing, and then now we can paint. Now you're going to be like, oh, this doesn't look right. Well, let's try painting a square with them, and let's see what happens. You can see that it's not looking the best. Why is it not looking the best? Well, we have a few things we could fix. We can go back to our tile set, and we can let's actually get rid of this for a sec while we try to troubleshoot. And let's see what happens when we paint with them. Okay, there we go. So we have our tiles working a bit. If I just paint with like a block, okay, there's a slight issue. If there's an issue with any of your blocks, you can just click on them and they should like fix themselves. So now we have our auto tile kind of working. I mean, it works in like very specific circumstances, which is not good, but we can always fix it. There we go. Just updating stuff. So you see we're missing a few tiles and the auto tile isn't working properly. Why is it not working properly? Let's see. Well, we can do match size. Okay, I believe match size would work better. There we go. If we match sides, we can experiment with different things and see which one works the best. So I'm just going to try a different one and see what match size gets me. This should work like this. Yeah, so if we paint it like this by clicking match sides, the tile set should behave differently. So if we go back, you can see that. Is it better? I think it's a bit better. Does anyone want me to go over or like repeat something? Because this is all like this is very specific to Godot and kind of confusing, but we can see that we can paint with our we can like paint in like a very like interesting way. Like now we have tiles like auto tile working, and we can just, you know, paint up and have a nice little like it automatically looks nice. There we go. Just grab this one, continue painting. Does someone have anything to like question or say like, oh, you went too fast, I didn't quite get what you meant? Just a quick rundown. You basically want to paint it so that tiles match up. So I'm gonna like, so if this is like the left one, I just wanted to paint so it matches with these 3 sides, but not this one, because then stuff wouldn't work. And this is kind of how you set up an auto tile. Of course, it depends on what your tile map looks like and whatnot. But for this one, the one in the assets, the auto tile works like that. To add collision shapes to it, we're gonna do something very similar, which is click our tile set, physics layer, add element, and obviously we're gonna go back to paint, and we're gonna click the physics layer 0, and we're going to select all of our tiles that we think should have collisions. These ones don't have collisions because they're not exposed to the player, and this one shouldn't either because it's not exposed to the player. These ones should because they are exposed to the player, and we can go back to our world, and we can instance our tile map auto tile scene, and we can paint with it. The reason this carried over is because it's over here. If I go over here and erase it like this, sorry, I go over here and erase it. So right click to erase, save, and go back. You can see it's gone. We can not hide, but we can delete this first tile map that we made. We're not deleting it from our project. We're just deleting its we're just deleting it from the scene. And what we can see over here is we can add a few squares. Okay, there we go. Add a few squares and whatnot, and we can have a nice little like it looks better in games, essentially. And there we go. If we run the scene, you can see that our tile map works, and we're basically able to kill the enemy, but we're basically able to have our auto tile set up and working so that when we run in our game, it looks nicer. If you're wondering how you can change which tiles automatically show up, what you can do is go to your auto tile, and for your tiles, you can basically select more. If you want, you can go to your tile set, paint. You can set up more. So if I go to terrains, terrain set 0, terrain 0, I can select more of these blank tiles, and I can paint with more of them. So if I go to terrains, physics, sorry, not physics layer 0, but terrains, and I can just paint with I can just select all of these because in reality, because these are inside blocks, they are connected on all sides. The brown, if I didn't explain this earlier, the brown means where it's connected from. So if I just highlight all the brown or highlight all the sides, they'll show up more frequently. And if I go back and if I go over here, if I paint with my tile map, sorry, the tile map, terrains, terrain 0, click with that, click with the paint bucket, we can see that we get a different combination of stuff inside. You can see over here, if I go back, you can see when we had fewer tiles, they're more repeated, like 1, 2, 3, 4 came up of the same, but now almost none of them do. So that's interesting. We can always change what tiles show up, and that's how you set up an auto tile. Does anyone want to see, did that make sense? Does someone want me to go over something again? Anyone have any question, comment, concerns?
Yeah, I'm assuming the state machine will be covered in a future workshop.
Yes, we could cover state machine in a future workshop.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I was just worried about that because Jaden asked about it.
I'm still trying to get my head around them because I don't feel comfortable enough to teach them or make one on the fly, but state machine could be a future workshop for sure. We covered everything I wanted to on we covered everything that I wanted to, which is platformer, animated sprites, blocks, Goomba-like enemy. Oh yeah, enemy kill player, we could do that. How to make player kill enemy, we did this one. How to make a door, and around this, Koopa we covered already, auto tiles. Okay, so how to make enemy kill the player. Oh yeah, we covered that. Okay, so we covered everything. Right? Okay, yeah, everything should be covered. Does anyone have any random ideas that they want to throw out to make? Or if not, then we'll just call the workshop and end over here. I'll give you guys a minute to think if any of you guys want to say anything.
I have a quick GD script question. What's the difference between just equal sign and colon equal sign?
Oh, okay, yes. I used that throughout and I didn't explain. So let's say I have sorry, I don't know, okay. So const let's say, I don't know, something and colon equal versus equal. The difference is when you don't do colon equal, you don't set the type. What do I mean by type? Type meaning int, string, sorry, string, float, any other type like array. You don't set the type. when you put a colon, you can set the type. When you don't have a colon, you do not set the type. And Godot kind of like says, okay, this can be whatever it wants. But when you set the type, Godot's like, okay, what are you doing? It's correct. Like, this is the type. You can't change it. I'll give an example. So if I go to function underscore ready and I say jump count equals, I don't know, some random string, it's going to scream at me and say, you can't do that because I already assumed this is to be an integer. Why are you trying to set it to a string? But you can see over here, there's no colon for this gibberish. So if I go over here and tell this gibberish that I want to change it to a string, sorry, if I go to Godot and tell I want to turn this variable of gibberish into a string, Godot's like, no problem, you can do that. But the second I try to do that with a colon, or if I like automatically already set the type of the variable, it will get mad at me. But what happens if I type something as a string and I set it as an int? It'll get mad at me again and say cannot set string as an integer and vice versa. It just helps you program, and Godot runs like a tiny bit faster because of it. Yes, type safety. Any other questions? No comments, concern. If no one says anything for like 2-3 minutes, then I'll just call the end of the workshop. Say thank you so much for everyone sticking around and learning. I hope everything made sense and I didn't go too fast. If someone has any like yeah, we'll post the VOD as soon as possible. Problem.
That was good. Thanks for doing it.
No problem. I hope everyone learned something or got something out of it. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. All right. I think everyone said something saying thank you and no one said a question. So I'll take that to be the end of the workshop. Thank you to everyone who stuck around. And have an amazing night. Bye. Stop sharing and y'all can hop out of this session. Bye.